Welcome back to the Unreal for Unity Developers tutorials. In this tutorial, we are going to create our first material and have a brief look at the material editor and system and see how it compares to Unity's system and transfer over our knowledge to Unreal. What we'll end up doing here is creating a material that we can apply to our jump pad here. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, as a prerequisite, you're going to need a texture for this tutorial. So grab any texture from any project you have, it doesn't really matter. So feel free to pause the video now and grab that. We'll be using that shortly. So first and foremost, let's create the material. So if we right click, you can see that we have an option right here to create a material. And we'll just go with the Unreal naming conventions and do M underscore, and we'll call it jump pad. And this is our material. So this is not like a Unity material. It's a little bit different. So a material in Unreal is more like a shader in Unity parlance. So what we have here is a node-based editor, just like the blueprint editor that we can use for materials. Now this is crazy daunting to look at first, so just ignore everything. We're going to leave it just like this for the moment, and we're going to go ahead and import that texture I told you a minute ago to grab. So I'm just gonna grab this texture from my desktop, and you can just drag it in, and just like that we have a texture in here. And I'm just going to double click this to show you. We're not going to go into this too much, but much like everything else in Unreal, we almost always have a dedicated editor for different things. So in this particular case, we have the texture editor, and you can see that it comes up with a lot of the different settings that you would have in the inspector in Unity. And in this particular case, I guess this blue image tricked Unreal, and it thinks it's a normal Mac. So we're just going to change that to default and save and get out of here. Yeah, so that's it for the texture editor. All right, so how do we get that texture in here? There's a bunch of different ways. What we're going to do is just set this up here, and we'll just drag it in. So we drag the image in, and just like that, we have our texture. So we have a texture sample node, and what this basically is equivalent to in Unity is your call to text2D to grab the data from the texture, the RGB and alpha channels. In Unity, you would be passing in the scaled UVs as well, in addition to your texture sampler. But in our particular case, if we leave the UVs empty, Unreal will fill them in for us. So for the outputs, we have the different pins here that are basically going to be your RGBA channels. So we have RGBA, and then this is the full color, the full vector 4. So we're just going to take this, drag it into base color. And you'll notice over here, we have a neat little preview of what's happening. You can choose a different shape for the preview. It starts out as a sphere, but you can make it whatever you want. You can even use custom meshes for this. This is the most like our jump pad, I suppose. Here would be this cylinder, so just make sure everything looks good on there. And it does. So let's save that. And when you save a material for the first time, it's actually going to compile all the variants that are required. So depending on your computer, it could take a couple seconds. So now we have this jump pad material, and we can apply it like Unity by drag and drop, or we can click on the jump pad and search for material when we have the cylinder selected, because the cylinder is our static mesh. You can see we're currently using the basic shape material. And if we select the jump pad material, there's a button here that says use selected asset from content browser, and we can click that, and you can see it has applied the material to our jump pad for us. So that's two different ways to apply a material. The third way is you can just use the drop down and select it from here. I just applied that to the floor, and you can see it had to compile it for that. So we're going to Control Z out of that. So that's it. We created our first material here. We didn't really do too much more with it. We just took a very basic texture and applied it to our static mesh. So let's jump in here and have another look at some of the other options we have. Okay, so a brief overview of what we actually have in the material editor. So what we have here on the right side is the result of our material. This is going to be all of the different outputs that we can provide. And you can see all we provided for this particular case is the base color. We didn't provide any others. So right now, let's just go ahead and provide a metallic, for instance. So if we drag this off, it gives us a little search box just like in Blueprint. Now, we're going to go ahead and just type in scalar, that we're going to spell it right, and you'll see we have a scalar parameter. And what that actually is just a float value that is exposed as a parameter on the material. So in Unity parlance, that's basically equivalent to your properties block at the top. Now in Unity, if you want something to be accessible in your material when you're writing your shader, you have to first add it to the properties block at the top, and then you have to add a declaration for it, your uniform declaration, and then Unity will display it in the inspector. In Unreal, we can just create this scalar parameter. We'll give it a name, and we'll call it metallic, sensible name. We'll give it a default value of 0.5, and we'll leave it like that. And let's just create one more. So we'll drag off the roughness, and again, type in scalar, and you can see in our parameter section, we get scalar parameter. So we can call this one roughness, and we'll change the default value of this to 0.5 as well. Again, you can see in real time this updates here as you change the values. So if I pull in a little bit closer and we change these values, you can see that when it changes, it recompiles the shader. Okay, fantastic. Let's jump back out here to our map and let's see how we can use those values. So if we go to our jump pad, and we know if we select the cylinder, we can see our material in here, but all we're seeing is the material. There's no way to actually get at those values. But what we need to do in Unreal to be able to access the parameters is we need to create an instance of the material. So I mentioned before, an Unreal material is a lot like a Unity shader. Now, a material instance would be more equivalent to a Unity material, be a closer match. So you can see there's a create material instance up here, and we'll just leave the default name. And you can see it's called mJumpPadInst, and we'll apply that to our jump pad. Oops, didn't quite get it, so I'll just drag it over here. Okay, so now you can see we have mJumpPadInstance in there. So let's double click that and take a look. Okay, so this is a lot different. We don't have a node-based editor for a material instance. We basically just have a preview over here, and we have the scalar parameter values that we exposed over here. So this is where they get really handy. So let's just drag this over to the side, and I'm going to get in a little closer here. So we can actually just make this a little bigger. We can click the checkbox here, and what that's letting us do now is it's letting us in real time change these values. So the shader doesn't need to be recompiled when we're doing different things like this. This is a much faster way to get your values dialed in, and you can expose all kinds of things just like Unity properties. Anything that you could possibly want, scalars, vectors, vector 4s, textures, all of that can be exposed and changed in a material instance. And where the system gets really powerful is you can actually then have a base material like jump pad and create different instances of that jump pad that have different properties. So some jump pads might only spring you up 400 centimeters, while others might be 1200, and you can change the material on each of those to make it look a little bit different. And that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to make one more material just so we can kind of get accustomed to the material system. Thanks for watching.